The Boston Celtics are scary right now. Why everyone wrote Boston off, let's be honest. The narrative made complete sense. Jayson Tatum tears his Achilles in the middle of a playoff run. 3 veterans from a championship roster walk out the door in the offseason. The team sheds salary to dodge the luxury tax. And suddenly more than half the championship core is gone. Every projection had Boston in the 5 to 8 seed range. Competitive enough to not be embarrassing, but nowhere near championship level. The basketball world basically closed the book on this season before the first tip-off. And on paper, that was the correct read. You do not lose that much and come out the other side better. That is not how basketball works. Except apparently nobody told the Boston Celtics that, because they did not get the memo and went ahead and had one of the more quietly impressive seasons in the league anyway. Against the Heat recently, Jaylen Brown dropped 43 points.
Sidestep 3. Another one for Jaylen Brown.
Tatum, now back from his Achilles injury, posted 25 points, 18 rebounds, and 11 assists for a triple-double in his return. The Celtics scored 53 points in the first quarter alone, a franchise record, tied for the second most first-quarter points in NBA history. Final score 147 to 129. Second in the Eastern Conference, 4th best net rating in the entire NBA, built almost entirely without their franchise player for most of the season. So yeah, the gap year narrative is dead. The question now is not whether Boston is relevant. That conversation is over. The question is how this happened and what it actually means heading into the playoffs. The system that does not need a star here is the thing that most people missed when they were writing Boston off. They were judging the team based on the names that left rather than the system that stayed. And Joe Mazzulla has been building something in Boston that is genuinely not dependent on any one player to function. The core principles are pretty straightforward to describe, but harder to execute than they sound. 5-out spacing, high volume 3-point shooting, minimal turnovers, and a defensive philosophy built on staying connected, trusting the structure, and not gambling for steals or over-rotating. The idea is to force you into making the wrong decision rather than trying to make the right one for you. It is a discipline-first system, and discipline-first systems tend to survive personnel changes better than star-dependent ones. The numbers back this up in a way that is kind of ridiculous. 6 points per 100 possessions. Second, without their best player. 7 defensive rating. That makes Boston one of only 2 teams in the NBA to rank top 5 in both offensive and defensive efficiency this season. I genuinely laughed when I first saw those numbers, because that is the kind of stat that sounds made up. It is not made up. It is just what happens when a system is built correctly enough that it keeps running even when the most important piece is sitting in street clothes watching from the bench. What Jaylen Brown actually became this season, none of this works without what Jaylen Brown did. And I want to be clear about what I mean, because saying Brown stepped up does not do justice to the actual transformation that happened. 3 assists per game and are impressive. He's been leading the league in shots per game and has forced himself into the top 5 of the MVP conversation. First team All-NBA looks like a law. The 43-point performance against the Heat, with 20 of those points coming in the first quarter alone, cemented the kind of statement that changes how voters and coaches think about a player. But the raw numbers undersell the real change. The assist number is what matters most. Brown has always been able to get his own shot. He has always been a threat attacking closeouts, finishing in transition, creating off the dribble. What he was not, for most of his career, was the guy who made the entire offensive structure function around him. That requires a different set of decisions. Reading the defense before the catch, not after. Knowing when to keep it and when to give it up. Understanding that a good pass from a star player creates a better shot than a contested attempt from a star player. This season, that clicked. Brown ran the half-court offense with real decision-making, hitting the right man at the right time, and the results showed up everywhere. Peyton Pritchard could attack. Sam Hauser could space and wait for the kickout. Derek White could focus entirely on the defensive end without needing to manufacture offense out of nothing. Brown absorbed the defensive attention that Tatum used to carry, and he distributed it correctly. That is the shit that does not show up in a highlight reel, but shows up in a second-place Eastern Conference standing. Defensively, Brown raised his level too, guarding the opponent's best perimeter player on a nightly basis while simultaneously running the offense. The version of Brown we have watched this season is a genuinely complete player in a way that was not true 2 or 3 years ago, and the league is going to have a hard time forgetting that.
So I'm excited I feel like I'm entering my prime, and I'm excited to maximize my potential.
Tatum's return and why it actually worked. Achilles recoveries are brutal. Even when the physical clearance comes, the confidence takes longer to catch up with the body. The planning, the cutting, the explosive first step, that stuff does not come back overnight, and plenty of players who have suffered the same injury have spent a full year and a half before getting back to their actual level. Tatum is not quite at 100% yet. The explosiveness is still building, but here is the thing. He does not need to be at 100% to make this team terrifying. One assists per game in 31 minutes. Against Miami, the 25-18-11 performance, combined with Brown's 43, the two of them were directly involved in 105 of Boston's 147 points. The rust burned off faster than anyone expected, which is either a sign of exceptional physical recovery or a sign that Tatum was never as far from ready as advertised. But the number that actually matters most is not Tatum's individual stat line. It is the fact that the team did not regress when he came back. The culture held, the system held, the mentality held. Nobody lost their role or their confidence the moment the star walked back through the door, which is something that happens all the time when a team has been performing without its best player and then has to reintegrate him. Sometimes the chemistry breaks, sometimes guys who were thriving in expanded roles suddenly shrink back. Sometimes the star comes back and the team gets worse because the balance gets disrupted. None of that happened in Boston. Mazzulla folded Tatum back into a structure that was already functioning at a high level, and the result is a team that can genuinely beat you in multiple ways. That is a legitimately frightening thing in a playoff context. The supporting cast that nobody talks about enough. Let's talk about the guys who actually made this season work, because the supporting cast conversation in Boston gets buried under the Tatum and Brown narrative, and that is not fair to what these players have done. Neemias Queta stepped into a starting center role that was a genuine question mark heading into the season, and has had one of the best breakout campaigns of any big man in the league. 3 blocks on 65% shooting from the field. Against the Heat, he posted 16 points on 71% shooting, 11 rebounds, and a plus 28 plus minus. He transformed the Celtic frontcourt. The rebounding improvement that has been one of the stories of the season runs directly through him. There is real rim protection now where there was not before. Rebounding has historically been a soft spot for Boston. You build a roster around perimeter shooting, you sacrifice physicality up front. That is just the trade-off. This season, Boston is 6th in total rebounding percentage, the highest they have ranked in years. Against Atlanta, they pulled down 52 boards to the Hawks' 35. Queta is the reason that is possible. When Brown missed time recently, Pritchard stepped up and dropped 36 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists against Atlanta. Not noob numbers, not filler stats. That is a legitimate performance from a guy who was supposed to be a role player. Sam Hauser shot 9 of 11 against Miami, including 5 of 7 from 3, with 23 points total, and 17 of those in the first quarter, tying a Celtics franchise record for threes in a single quarter. 7% from 3 on the season, and opening every driving lane that Tatum and Brown attack. Luka Garza went for 22 off the bench against Minnesota. Jordan Walsh provides physical defensive energy that Mazzulla leans on in specific matchups. Derek White continues to be the anchor that holds the defensive structure together. And then there is Hugo Gonzalez, who deserves a separate conversation. From a late first-round rookie, he brings relentless defensive energy, rebounding, intelligent cutting, and a feel for the game that most rookies do not develop until their 3rd or 4th year. He tied a game against Atlanta with a late shot that you would have had no business expecting a late first-round rookie to make. He made it anyway.
Coming out party, folks. Hugo Gonzalez is here. Sorry, Cooper Flag. That's the rookie of the year.
Add Nikola Vucevic to the mix, and you have 10 to 11 guys who can contribute in meaningful ways on any given night. That depth is what championships are built on. The real problem, Boston, still has this video would not be honest if it only covered what the Celtics are doing well. There is a real concern heading into the postseason, and it needs to be addressed directly. When Boston runs into a defense that can crowd the three-point line, build a wall at the arc, take away the catch points, force them into a different kind of offense, the system stalls. The entire structure is predicated on getting good looks from 3 and in transition. When a team is disciplined enough to take that away, the Celtics have historically struggled to manufacture offense through other means. Against the top 2 teams in the West this season, Boston is 1-3 combined against OKC and San Antonio. The Spurs handled them twice. OKC took one earlier in the year when Tatum was still on the sideline. Those numbers are concerning if you are a Boston fan who is trying to project how this team performs in a 7-game series against an elite defense in May. Here is the caveat though. The one win in that combined record came against OKC with Tatum back in the lineup, and that matters more than the overall record does, because it tells you what this team looks like at full strength rather than what it looked like for most of the season running without its best player. Tatum changes this equation in a specific and important way. His ability to manufacture offense in isolation, the post-ups, the pull-up off the high ball screen, the mid-range game he's been developing for years gives him something that does not exist when he is not available.
Tatum trying to be aggressive.
Tough fall-away shot. Backs it in.
You cannot just wall off the arc and dare the Celtics to beat you when Tatum is healthy, because he will. That is precisely the skill set that his absence made irrelevant for most of the season, and it is exactly the skill set that matters most in a playoff series against a team with a legitimate defensive scheme. What this team actually is, the gap year narrative deserved to die because it was built on the wrong assumption. It assumed that what made Boston good was the specific names on the floor. The reality is that what makes Boston good is the blueprint underneath those names. The system, the discipline, the defensive philosophy, the spacing principles, the culture that Mazzulla has built around doing the right thing over and over until it becomes automatic. The veterans who left were products of that system. When they left, the system did not leave with them. It got handed to the next group of guys, and those guys ran it. That is a genuinely rare thing in professional basketball. Tatum is back. Brown is playing like a legitimate top 5 player in the league. The front court is solved in a way it has not been in years. The bench has real contributors top to bottom, and there are 10 to 12 guys in the rotation who know exactly what their job is and how to execute it under pressure. This is not the same Boston Celtics that won in 2024. It was never supposed to be. That team was great. What is being built right now is different, younger in certain spots, deeper across the board, and stress tested in a way that championship teams rarely get tested during a regular season. They got handed the hardest possible version of this year and came out the other side with a better front court, a more versatile bench, a franchise player in Brown who leveled up under pressure, and a system that proved it does not need any single star to keep functioning at an elite level. The question nobody is fully asking yet, but the one that will define the next 2 months, is whether Mazzulla ball holds up over 7-game series against the best teams in the East. Because regular season proof is one thing, playoff proof is another conversation entirely. If you liked watching this, drop a like and I will see you in the next one.